What is up, Whale family, and welcome to Blockchain Beats, where we explore the pioneering artists taking audio and music to the next level of emerging tech and interactivity with NFTs. My guest today is KSHMR, an Indian-American musician, songwriter, record producer, and record-breaking DJ known for crushing the EDM charts with his layered, cinematic, rhythmic soundscapes. Niles, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Thank you, man. Wow, that was a hell of an introduction. That was great.
Well, you have a lot more to you that I couldn't even cover in there, but to be concise for the audience and let you tell it yourself, wanted to make sure I left some room there. Real excited to talk with you. Just for anyone in the audience that may not be familiar with you or your music, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I started making music in middle school. I was probably around 13 years old. I was making beats. I didn't know shit about music, really. Didn't know what a chord was. Still made beats anyway, and went into high school, started getting better. I had a studio in my mom's house. It was just this room that I turned into the quote unquote studio, and started to record people and get, good at producing. And I had a group that it was called the Cataracts. And in the Bay Area, we started to get popular and started playing shows. And we took that momentum and we moved down to Los Angeles. And I was producing music for other people, and I made a song called Like a G6 for this group, the Far East Movement. That song became really big, bigger than anybody expected. And that sort of opened the door for me into the music industry as a, like a quote unquote hit pop producer. And I started to produce a lot of pop music. Eventually, I fell out of love with that. And my group disbanded, and I started KSHMR. And KSHMR was an electronic project. And for me, that was going to be how, I created the artist I wanted to be, that I wanted to be left on my tombstone, that I felt like really reflected me. And that led me down this path where I am now of KSHMR and being an electronic music producer. But, aside from that, I'm a lover of music. Since I was young, just having my walls plastered with posters of the artists that I admired. And I love video games, and I think that pretty much sums it up. I even like making little games, and that's a hobby of mine. So that's something that I do alongside music.
Wow, that's very cool. I like how you so casually mentioned that you made Like a G6, as if it wasn't like a chart-topping smash. So you mentioned the Bay Area. You're from California originally?
Yes, I'm from Berkeley, California. My dad came from India, and he met my mom at school there. He was going to UC Berkeley.
Very cool. And this early stage, you said you were making beats. Did you have equipment? Was this on the computer with Fruity Loops? Like, how did that come about?
Oh my God, that's funny you call it Fruity Loops, because yeah, I use Fruity Loops.
Okay.
But now it's called the FL Studio.
Right.
But I'm so old that I remember a time when it was called Fruity Loops, and I definitely used it to make some beats. And I used primarily this program called Sony Acid, or Sonic Foundry Acid, it was called at the time. It's funny, actually, my whole introduction to music, it started in Flash. So I used to make these little games in Flash, and I wanted to put music to the games. And so I found loops, that were free on the internet. And I started layering them on top of each other, and I was like, oh shit, I'm making music. And then that became addictive, and I learned about acid, and then I started layering lots of loops over each other. And my mom's house, this little room that I said turned into the studio, ended up being, where my whole career started. Luckily, she allowed me to work really late into the night, making music. And Berkeley High, where I went to school, where my group started, we also had G-Eazy, and G-Eazy went to school with me, and he would come over, he'd record sometimes too, which is a very random connection because he's very popular now.
That's very cool. I may also be old enough to have played with Cool Edit Pro and Fruity Loops and some other things back when I was trying to experiment. But I love that you said you also make games and Flash games. I'm a big Strong Bad fan from back in the day, and the Cheat and a lot of those guys. So was into the Flash games and shows that were on at that same period.
Yeah, Newgrounds was really big for me, if you remember Newgrounds.
I do.
Still around, Newgrounds, yeah.
So that was from about 2003 to like 2013 that you were doing that?
Yes, I graduated high school in 2006.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, when I really got serious about producing, it's probably just throughout high school instead of going to class. Honestly, I was getting serious about producing, learning how to produce.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It lists 2014 as your first electro house single, which was called Megalodon. Coincidentally, a
Yes.
role in our whale community here.
Yeah.
But I also saw you mentioned that you were doing ghost production before that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. So I was making pop music before electronic music, and I wasn't sure, uh, if people wanted a pop guy to transfer over into dance music. I saw will.i.am was doing it from the Black Eyed Peas, and I wasn't sure if it was tasteful. The electronic scene is a very, sacred thing, and guys were hopping in and trying to make a quick buck, and I didn't want to be one of those guys. I wanted to test my skills in it, and I used ghost production to do that. So I had a friend who was a DJ but didn't know how to produce, and I tried to make him some dance songs. And one of the songs that I made for him got really popular, and that was a sign to me that I could authentically make dance music. And that's when I started KSHMR.
Very cool. And then you were anonymous for some time while you're trying to work through that, and how exactly you wanted to come out. And then Tiesto introduces you at a festival. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I started KSHMR, again, kind of on this idea that I didn't want people to connect it to the cataracts and the pop music work that I had done, I didn't show my face for the first year. I just made music. I made song after song. I put it out. I was just trying to let the music speak for itself and not have anybody hold, the music that I'd done before against me or compare it to that. And after a year, I made this song with Tiesto called Secrets. And I said, hey, well, if he's going to invite me up on stage at Ultra, that would be like the coolest way, to finally show my face. So I went up on stage, and that was, the first time that I sort of revealed myself to the public. And it was, your heart kind of stops. You go up there and you look at all these people. It's the Ultra main stage. And I was at a loss for words. It's pretty awkward, honestly. If you want to watch the video, I get up there and I'm so stiff, and I'd never seen so many people before. So it was crazy.
Do you feel that there's a within the EDM community kind of an anonymity movement? Because I've heard that from a few other musicians that say they'd rather stay out of the public eye for various reasons. You have people like Sikik or whomever who had obviously other implications, but it's something that I see in this genre quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, electronic music is often it's somebody being, by themselves. Maybe they're not a traditional musician, but they feel that they could craft something really special. Whereas, other forms of music, it's more of a full package. You want to have the look, you want to have the charisma, and then you have the music, but they're sort of equal parts. And dance music was honestly an opportunity for the more awkward, maybe, nerdy guys like I consider myself to have a real shot at making a big impact on a genre of music. And I didn't ever look at myself as the super charismatic or, good looking guy. I didn't look at myself as a star. But through electronic music, I really found, for me, a genre that would just, take the music for what it is. And you could build a story around it, but the story didn't really have to be you. The story could be your ideas and the worlds that you paint. It didn't have to be your face and what you look like so much. And that really appealed to me because I'm a big believer in my craft and what I can do there. I don't know if I have like a superstar quality, if that makes sense,
Right. Well, ranked number 12 of the 2021 top DJs in the world. Obviously, the rest of the world does believe that you have superstar qualities and wants to support you in that. How would you characterize your music and sound for people that aren't familiar?
I would say that, it's electronic music, and it uses that as the format. And then I interject it with world sounds and music from my heritage, my Indian heritage, and using dance music really as a format to tell stories. And it's always been the most exciting aspect to find new instruments, not just synthesizers, but real, authentic, flawed instruments. I love real organic instruments because they're flawed, sort of like the human voice. It has errors and it has fluctuations, and that's a beautiful thing to me. So I try to merge that with dance music, and I think that's become my sound.
Now, you've been doing music for a long time, but it lists Harmonia Andromeda as your debut album. Is that correct?
Yeah, Harmonica Andromeda, is my debut album. It just came out a few months ago, and then the deluxe version of it just came out. So I added 5 more songs to it. And yeah, even though I put out a lot of songs, I never really made a full album. I had done some EPs, which were, maybe like 6 songs, but this is a lot bigger. So I put everything I have into it. I spent most of the quarantine making it. And it's scary when you do that. When you put so many eggs into one basket, you spend so much time and energy into one thing. There's a voice in your head that's like, well, what if it's not that great? What does that say about you if it's not that great? But I pushed through, and I'm really happy with it. And I haven't honestly been happier about music ever before as much as I am now in my life.
Yeah, I was taking a listen before that, and it kind of gets you wrapped up in it. It really has a cinematic quality to it, where almost like you're telling stories, so to speak, if you connect all the different songs. Was that intentional?
Yeah, that was definitely intentional. I wanted each song to put you in a different place, a different scene. But for me, they were all steps in the journey of this young hero. And the story was clear in my mind, and it really helped direct where he's going to go and what the scene should entail, what the instruments that are true to this scene would be. And it was just really fun. There was the cinematic quality that you mentioned. That's always been a thing that I like putting in the music. But for the first time with this album, I could do things that almost a score would do. A score reacts to a story, and it could evolve in a dramatic way. It could wind up in a place that's completely different from where it started, just like the arc of a scene in a movie might be completely different at the end from where it started. So some of these songs go on complete tangents, and I really tested myself of what I could accomplish musically. That was really rewarding, to challenge myself in a way that you just don't do if you're making the more utility-based dance songs, songs that are serve a purpose on the dance floor that tend to be repetitive. They tend to be a simple, nice little package. And on the album, you start with one idea, and then it just blossoms and it unravels, sometimes into something completely different. And that was really fun for me as a musician.
Yeah, and looking at some of the reviews, that seems to be some of the accolades as well. That you were really able to take things in an expansive direction outside of what would be typical, and people appreciate that. You had
Thanks.
mentioned,
Thank you.
yeah, no, definitely. You had mentioned kind of the ethnocentric music that you sprinkle in and make almost seamless with everything else, but it definitely adds that flavor to some of the stuff you do. I think I read that you really didn't have an interest in using that and leveraging that until much later on in your music making career. Could you tell me why that was the case?
Sure. I mean, when I was young, I grew up going to India and being told that I'm a Kashmiri Brahmin priest, which doesn't mean I'm really a priest. It's just it's a part of the culture of the religion, and it didn't have an impact on me. I just thought, okay, I've got my dad with a funny accent, and Indians weren't particularly cool, in mainstream culture. So I was never trying to, I don't know, I wanted to fit in with other kids, as many of us do. So although that was a part of me, it's not something that I really dived into or took great interest in. I just wanted to get along as a kid, you know, for other kids to like me and so on. And as I got older, I took definitely more interest in my heritage and valued my trips to India more. And with my music, when it came time to start fresh with the new project, I chose the name Kashmir because that was who I am. And I gotten sick of trying to be other things that maybe would, you know, create success or popularity in music. This was going to be who I really am. So I named it Kashmir, and at first I wasn't forcing too many Indian sounds on it. I had done some, but I thought maybe these songs with the Indian sounds would just be free downloads. They don't need to be official releases. And there was actually Jorn from Spinnin', who is my he's my A&R there. He's a person that handles my project over at Spinnin'. He really encouraged me to put out the ones with big Indian influence as real releases. And he was right. People liked it. And that completely transformed my perception of what I could do musically and what people would react well to. And once I found out that that connected, that was just so awesome, because I love putting Indian sounds and world sounds in with electronic music. It's such fresh territory. It's territory, it's sort of like a well that never runs out, because there's so much musical history throughout the world and new instruments to discover, that once you free yourself from the shackles of synthesizers, dance music can be so much more, you know?
Yeah, I really love that story of, you know, how it came to be more prominent in your music. You know, a lot of times people are looking to become so homogenized and accepted, and ultimately it's the nuances and the differences that really appeal to people. So I thought that was especially cool. But aside from the Indian music, what else were your major influences and kind of how you honed your ear and your craft?
My major influences, I would say they sort of took a turn. I was really into Marilyn Manson. I was into Korn. I was a big rock guy. And so I don't know what happened when the switch flipped, but I got really into rap music, and I got into West Coast rap especially. So my room used to be covered with posters of Dr. Dre. They weren't even real posters. They would be like things I printed out, and I would stitch them together. So I would take, like, you know, 15 pieces of paper and I'd make myself a poster. And it'd be Dr. Dre, it'd be Exhibit, it'd be Snoop Dogg, Corrupt, Eminem, Tupac was really, really big for me. And that was also mixed with the Beatles, which my dad, ever since I was young, was just a huge Beatles fan. So I studied and knew just about every Beatles song, and they sort of became the template for melody for me. I just felt like nobody beat the Beatles at melody. And also the trajectory of the Beatles, to start out as a boy band and to become completely experimental, to almost abandon, you know, the Beatles and go with a concept project like Sgt. Pepper's, and you know, to do a bunch of acid, of course, and to go to India and meet Ravi Shankar, and just took their music in so many directions. But the common thread that made it all work was they were so good at melody, which I think, you know, people talk about genres, but to me, it's just about the melody at the end of the day.
That's really intriguing, especially with the foundation being such aggressive music, and, you know, and then combining that with, you know, the melody-driven process that you have. You mentioned Corrupt, and when you say you're a West Coast fan, and you throw Corrupt in and not the typical Dre and Pac, I know that's really genuine. You were in the weeds there, so I can appreciate that.
Yeah, Nate Dogg. Yeah, Nate Dogg and Warren G. And Nate Dogg had like a double album. I forget what it was. I think it was just called G-Funk.
Yeah, Nobody Does It Better. I had that album. Yep. Yeah.
You bring the bottle of wine.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, you know that stuff. That's really cool, man.
I definitely do. Do. Did you have an opportunity to work with any of these people that you had appreciated growing up as far as hip hop goes?
Yes, but you know, by the time that I was somebody who could work with them,
right,
these guys' careers had taken, you know, they had wound up in really new places. Snoop Dogg I got to work with, but we did this sort of auto-tuney kind of modern kind of song. It wasn't like classic Snoop Dogg, but it was great. It was called Sweat, and then David Guetta remixed it, and actually that did pretty well after Guetta remixed it. So that was cool to work with Snoop in that way. Exhibit, I did a session with him. It just didn't click. I may have been too, starstruck. I don't know what it is, but what it was, but yeah, it didn't quite click. I'm trying to think. I have another story that I hate to tell, but Rivers Cuomo from the band Weezer, which I'm a really big fan of. I had a session with him, and that day, like none of the equipment worked. Like I couldn't get his guitar working. Everything, computer was messing up, and he was really sweet about it. He's like, "We'll just find another time, and that's fine." And then I just never got the call back, and just kind of lost that opportunity. But maybe it's better not to meet your idols. Just leave them be separate.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you know, creativity happens when it happens. You can't really pull it, right? It has to be when it naturally would occur, when you start making it an objective, and sometimes things go awry when that happens. So it just wasn't meant to be, that song.
Yes, yeah, I suppose so. I like that take on it. That's good.
I mean, all musicians always tell me when they try to set out to do something with an objective, it ends up being okay. But when inspiration just comes to them and they just, end up getting together, that's when the magic happens. So I'm sure that will happen in the future. Probably some MC is going to see this. I know I showed my wife, she couldn't believe it. She knows modern Snoop Dogg. I'm like, let me play you the Shiznit or something from Doggy Style. And she's like, is this the same person? So Snoop, to his credit, has evolved tremendously through the years and continues to do so.
Yeah. One of my favorite albums of all time is The Last Meal.
Really?
Yeah.
Which songs on that?
I think Hennessy and Buddha is the first one, but What's My Name? Snoop Dogg. That was a big one on there. Lay Low was on there. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You better lay low. Yeah. But yeah, it was one of those in-between albums that, it doesn't come up when people talk about classics, but dude. Yeah.
As a big fan, I can tell, because you could find the gems in all the albums, right? Like I even like something from the No Limit album with Mia X. That's one of my jams in my workout. He had a song with Mia X when he was down there in New Orleans. But we're going way in the weeds now.
Yeah. All right. I'd have to hear it. Yeah.
Sure. Maybe I'll shoot you a DM afterwards with it, so we can compare West Coast hip hop fandom notes.
So you're a West Coast guy as well, huh?
I am not. I'm in Boston.
Oh.
I'm in Boston. But at the time of when I was growing up, the aggression of that music kind of spoke to me and appealed to me just by the nature of its authenticity.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's aggression. And I think when my parents split, and that was a really rough patch for me, I really turned to music, and especially aggressive music. That was really my outlet.
Right. And you prefaced that even before with Manson and bands like that. And I kind of had a similar path with Alice in Chains or whomever that I was really into at the time. So very cool to hear, and helps kind of paint the picture of how you come to the table with what you do, because there's purpose to it. There's potency to it, even when you're trying to shape these, cinematic kind of soundscapes. Yes.
If you mean what I think you mean, is that I don't like to go subtle.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I like, when I hear a great song that has nuance and subtlety, I absolutely appreciate it. I don't think that was my role. That was my destiny. I sit there and I have this itch, like to make it bigger or hit harder, and I can't get rid of it. And, I'm just not going to make the song if I can't, try to, I guess, take what the idea is and then sort of expand it and magnify it and have it be like, at some point in the song, hit this peak where the highest intensity evolution of that idea is given to you. That's so important to me. For it to all sort of culminate into like a drop. And honestly, that's why dance music was, for me, a really great format, that you have the breakdown and the drop, and you can start from there, and you can make it really interesting and innovative. But it's a format for a reason, I think.
Definitely, definitely. So I'm curious, we just went through this year of COVID and quarantine, definitely impacting musicians significantly with the inability to tour. And for some people, it got them more into their creative process and doing things differently. How do you find that it's impacted you and your creative process?
Honestly, man, it was huge. I don't think this album would have gotten done without COVID, because the way that my life was set up and the lives of so many DJs are set up, you're touring at least half of the year. And if you have a week in between shows or 2 weeks in between shows, sure, on paper, that looks like a lot of time. You could get in the studio, but you're most likely going to try to finish something that you know you could finish within a short period of time. With quarantine, on the other hand, I allow myself the freedom to experiment, to spend a few weeks. Even if nothing came out of it, I learned and I pushed closer to breaking through. Even if a song wasn't materializing, I was challenging myself. And that's something that I felt almost irresponsible doing in the years when I had to juggle music creation with shows. So with quarantine, I was able to really experiment and for myself come to a new level of the music that I was making. And, the whole album took about a year. So it's just hard to find that kind of time. And quarantine gave it to me. It was terrible in so many ways, but it was a gift creatively.
Now, are you back to touring again or having some dates on the calendar?
It's slowly starting to shape back up, but I tour so much internationally that it's very case by case.
Right.
How countries are opening back up. But you see that EDC is going to happen. I think it's still going to happen. They seem confident. So that is going to be one of the first shows that I play since the quarantine started, to a public, to a full crowd. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, you talked about kind of your reluctance to step into the spotlight and really enjoying the process of electronic music and that you can play the background. Has that kind of flipped on its head? Do you enjoy touring now, and it's something that you feed off the energy of, or is it still kind of a relationship you're trying to manage?
It's a double-edged sword for me. I mean, I absolutely love connecting with the fans. I absolutely love that part of it. Being up on stage, I take a lot of measures to make it less and less about me. Like in the live show, there's this animated story that plays during the show. That is what I really want the viewers to pay attention to. So when you show up to a performance, before I even go on stage, you see the introduction of what's going to be a 4-act animation story. And you get introduced to the characters, and then I go into the music and I play music. And about 20 minutes later, you get Act 2 and so on. And by the end, the last song that I play is intertwined with the animation, and you get this nice big climax that has an added gravity because of what is going on in the story. So the song has this, this extra intensity to it because it's going with the story. For me, that's what I want people to pay attention to. So when I go and I play the show, yes, I absolutely, I love delivering the show because I'm so proud of what me and my team put together. I don't need to be the guy, on stage. I have my hand movements that I've developed now. I do my left to right and all, I try to give people the show that they deserve. It's my natural habitat is in a room, in a studio, making music. But I love it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, when you play a great show and you're scared, your heartbeat is racing, but you pull it off and you play people new music, you took some risks. That's hugely rewarding. So that part, it's a big adrenaline rush, and I definitely love it. So yeah, not playing that down. I just love being here, being a dork, making music. That's really my bread and butter.
I think some people would argue whether you qualify as dork or not, but I'll leave that to them to hash that out. You talk about the multimedia experience that you like to have with animation in conjunction with your music and kind of intersperse, and that's a great transition to talk about NFTs, because certainly some of that interactivity is what that kind of medium provides. But before we talk about your specific drop coming up, can you tell me a little bit about your exposure to NFTs or cryptocurrency if you were already involved in that, but the NFT scene in general?
Sure. So the NFT scene had to be explained to me, and it took a while for me to wrap my head around, as did cryptocurrency. But I started to understand and appreciate NFTs from a collector perspective once I realized that we're headed to a place where most things are going to be digital. Most of what I create never has to leave my computer really in a physical way. Most of the art that I create. And when I was young, I wanted to know each and every single thing that I could about the artists that I believed in, the artists that I admired. And I have to sort of retrain my brain to understand that we're in a new generation where, having digital art and owning it is just the future. And honestly, most of your identity and the things you own being attached to yourself in a digital way, I think is the future. So NFTs are, I think, being adopted by a lot of artists right now because it makes sense. You can put your art up there, but it does feel like this is just the beginning of it. With my own music, and it's really fun because I have so much more than just the music that I want to show people. So it's been an exciting way to do that. But my initial introduction to NFTs, let's see. Of course, we all heard about the Blau thing. The Blau thing was
right.
Huge. And that's when I started to try to wrap my mind around it. And I was honestly confused until I started to think of myself and how I feel about collecting, and just reformat that to the future and where the future of collecting is headed.
Yeah, and actually, the Whale Vault owns a piece of that Blau drop, the record-breaking drop. So we're very, very familiar with the amazing value that you guys are coming with as far as fan interactivity and this new paradigm that you're kind of building with NFTs. And you mentioned, growing up in that era where you loved West Coast rap and people wanting to collect all these physical pieces to take part and support and be a part of a bigger movement. And some of that has been lost a little bit in recent years. Streaming is the dominant delivery platform. And it's not like when people could go and go home with a cassette or a CD and want to, look at all the artwork inside because it was a surprise, want to look at the liner notes, see if it had lyrics or secret messages or whatever. That's kind of been lost. And I feel like NFTs kind of give us an opportunity to get back to that. You could say, hey, I have this really cool thing that supports, this artist, and, this has this unique attribute that you don't have otherwise. There's a lot of cool stuff that we could do. And that interactivity, that ability to have something tangible and give value back to being part of the process, NFTs help us kind of reclaim that.
Yes. That's exactly how I feel. I feel like, music has been headed in a direction over the last few years, which is very single driven. It's not very album encouraging. It doesn't encourage an artist to make an album. And once you head in that direction, you start to lose, what makes music special. Music is an insight, not just into how catchy somebody could be, but into their whole world. You're drawn in by the catchy song, but then you fall in love with the artist, and your real attachment and your relationship with an artist is formed not just through the big hits. On my favorite artist albums, the big hits were the songs I ended up skipping most of the time.
Right.
And my love for artists went to like finding, Tupac's Book of Poetry, or finding the instrumental version of 2001 and dissecting how he did each thing in that. So I want to do that for people, the people who care. If there's a community who cares enough for it, I want to give them that extra comprehensive look into the art. I would have done it the whole time. It's just, it's impressed upon you not to care about that stuff, to care less and less, because the return seems like, well, who cares if you make some extended version or some in-depth version of something? People want the single, and if that single is no good, you move on to the next single. So to have a community that cares and wants to learn more and wants to get a deeper insight into it, it's awesome. And honestly, it's kind of exciting as an artist because I would love to make more around the art. I need a justification for it, you know? And
Right.
I've done it with the live show. With the live show, as I mentioned to you, creating the story that, you know, gives added gravity to the songs. In the live show, you can justify, right? Because live shows make money, and you can invest into that. And honestly, my goal with the NFTs, if I could even just make enough money to keep making them, you know, and to keep building the world. And that story that I told you that I envisioned in my head for the album, if I could keep making the art that shows you the characters that our hero meets and the places that he goes to, if I could just even fund that, for me, that would be a success.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the commoditization of music has been tough to watch, but the cool thing about NFTs is it's a statement from the fans, really, right? Like we believe there's intrinsic value in this artist relationship beyond just listening and getting that catchy drop or hook or whatever. We want to be part of something bigger. And the cool thing is, you know, there's varying degrees of success in streaming and what it can mean from a monetary standpoint, right? But for some artists, you know, they could have what would be substantial amount of streams for them, but what they get after the splits and, you know, they get that check cut from Spotify or whomever, it's really not going to amount to a lot. Whereas they could sell 10 NFTs to 10 of their fans and have enough to sustain their artistry and just do art for, you know, however long of a period. So I really love the paradigm shift because of what it means from the consumer and what it means for the artist. And, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing to really put the focus on the art and less so about the commoditization.
Yes, definitely. It gives an opportunity, it gives a place for artists to go deeper and have a community that appreciates it.
Yep.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, so would love to talk a little bit about, you know, the drop upcoming on the 28th. If you could give us kind of a recap of what the drop entails.
Yeah, exactly. So the drop starts Monday on June 28th at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It starts with a round of open editions that are designed around the music and the art from the album. And you'll have 60 minutes to purchase those NFTs. They're at a fixed price. They're in that window of time. And right after that drop is the 48-hour auction where you can get the higher tier stuff. So yeah, starting with the open editions, we have the characters from the album. You have the Moon King and the Phoenix, which are these beautiful 3D renders of scenes that our young hero takes part in as the album progresses. And then under there, you have Harmonica Andromeda, which is of course, the album title and also one of the songs. And you have Blood in the Water. And these are these nice sort of collector's cards. Yeah, so between the four of those, you really get these awesome looks into scenes from the story that unfolds during the album. And then you have the higher tier stuff, which we tried to pack as much value into as we possibly could. We really went all the way out there. So you've got, let's see here, the very first tier, the top tier, the platinum tier is going to be all the song stems. You get lifetime passes to all of my shows. You get to even come with me for a show to the green room, to the hotel, to the stage, and get that whole experience, which it's going to be wild. You get to come up on stage with me. You get a canvas of the album cover art, and you get some of the open edition NFTs as well. So it's just a lot. And if you go down to the slightly lower tiers of the auctioned NFTs, they just, you know, they're slightly varied in what you get. Like maybe you don't get the whole ride along experience, but there's still a lot of value in each one of them. And I really tried to make sure that we put as much as we could that I thought could be interesting to somebody who likes the music.
Yeah, this is kind of an unprecedented access to you, right? Like talking about someone that was, you know, trying to maintain some anonymity, and this is probably the most access any fan's ever been able to take part of what you do.
Yes, definitely. which is cool though. I love it. I've always been really open about my art and wanting to share it and share the inner workings of it. And for anyone who's interested, willing to listen to me, I'll give it all to them. So I love it. I love sharing.
I also love that you included the stems here, especially given your background and, coming from Fruity Loops and Acid. So, fans of your music could take those different components that you put together and kind of, play around with it and make kind of their own version for fun of your music.
Yes, definitely. The idea with the stems is to give people a sort of bare naked look at what happened in the creation of the song. Things that by the time a song's done, nobody might hear, little details. There's a funny story. One time I got enlisted to do a remix for Carlos Santana for Oye Como Va. It was this version, like a 2016 version or something like that, some new version of it. And I got the stems, the original stems. And there was even one in there called Do Not Use. And it was just him and his band fucking around, making mistakes, laughing at each other. And it was so cool to me. I got this insight into the room on the day that one of the most influential songs got made, Oye Como Va. So yeah, that was just so special. And I thought it would be cool to give people that same kind of naked look into how these songs got made by giving them the stems.
That's awesome. So 3 tiers to the auction that, the most is packed in this, number 1, the 1 of 1. The second tier, the gold collection, there's 2. And for the silver collection, there is 7. Awesome access to you and very cool stuff that you had put together for this.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you. I really wanted to step into the brim of things that I think have value,
Yeah, and you know what? As a musician, fan interaction is just like such a huge key component of market presence and kind of making sure that fan base is being able to enjoy more and more of what you do. We've touched on it a lot here, but how do you feel NFTs are able to really enhance that interactivity for you?
I mean, with NFTs, you can communicate right directly with the people that collect stuff. So it's just more personal. I mean, I think that the community is smaller and it's more intimate. So the people that are really willing to support you in a big way, you can have this relationship with them, and you can figure out also what they're looking for. Like, I tried to make the best possible guesses that I could this time, but I think from here, as I continue to do more, I'll have that communication and have a better idea of what people are looking for and what people, find interesting about the art. It's sometimes hard from the outside looking in. So I think the communication with artists it becomes a lot easier given this format.
Yeah, and I know that you are just now getting into this and seeing the different possibilities, and it's a natural fit with, you even talked about making games on the side, right? As a hobbyist, like there's so many amazing things that this is great for, especially with kind of that multimedia and connectivity being the goal for storytelling for you. But, the smart contract and NFTs, without getting into too much of the technical aspect of it, but it allows you to do a lot of cool stuff that are interactive when people hold them. Like there's NFTs that can change the visual or change the music based on something you do in your home studio at some point, right? Like the song could evolve or it could change based on the weather, like the mood. And there's so many cool opportunities that this opens, going forward, that we're just scratching the surface of what's out there. So I think you will really enjoy being able to leverage that as you continue down this path.
Could you tell me more about that? So something could change and evolve?
Yes.
Based on, can you explain that more to me?
Yep. So, oh man, I'm going to butcher this because I'm not the tech guy, but essentially, there's a smart contract embedded in this. This is code on the blockchain, and, on the surface, you could use it just to hold data in files, which is what an NFT is, but there's also more advanced, contracts types that allow you to do different things. Like some people have released nested NFTs, meaning you have one, if you do a certain thing, it unlocks other stuff for you. Some people have created ones that interact with something. There was an artist I was looking at a couple of days ago. They made this very cool visual in pixel art. I'm a geek for pixel art and glitch art. And based on the time of day on your clock on your computer when you're looking at it, it totally changes to a nighttime scene with different things in the environment. And if it's daytime, there's a sunrise and it comes up. There's possibilities. You know, there's a project that allows different stems to be purchased, and then the users that have them, based on what they're actioning, to change the song, to change, the tonality of it, to change the vocals on it. There's so many cool possibilities when you just think of it like these are Legos, and right now it's good to get it's good to establish something out there, but there's a lot more opportunities down the road. I know someone that a musician that actually put something together with Origin, who have been amazing partners for musicians, put something together. They launched, and then later on they were looking at, because they have the addresses of all their holders, they know all the existing people that collected. They had put something together in the studio, said, let me just drop something to these guys. And so they had sent like something additionally. So there's so many cool things that you could do to enhance that experience. So we are just at the beginning stages of what's going to be possible for that fan musician interaction.
That's really cool. One thing that really caught my ear about what you said was, if I'm interpreting this right, that the NFT that somebody purchases, becomes the owner of, they can manipulate and then see that manipulation reflected in something else. Like maybe there's just for example, maybe there is like a home that exists on the internet, right? Like some sort of 3D home, and you can change your section of the home based on what you do with your NFT. Like there's an intercommunication there.
That's absolutely correct. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have this NFT, you could make changes, and then you could see something change based on your contribution to it.
And there's lots of ways it changes something that's part of a collective ownership thing, right? There could be 10 people or 100 people that own different ones, and when they make nuance changes, so there's so many cool possibilities. But like when you start thinking about not just art, but like with the music, with video, with nesting, how you could kind of put these all together, like smoke starts coming out of my ears. I get excited, but my brain's going to explode, right? Fortunately, there's coders much smarter than me working on this, but there's a lot of possibilities going forward.
That's really cool. All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I did, it makes sense for you, just kind of based on all the different stuff that you were dabbling in, from, coding and Flash and putting together music and different genres and stuff. But, there's a lot of genres coming forward now with interest in NFTs, but it really seems like the early adopters with experimenting with this have come from the EDM and also the hip hop community. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think electronic music is obviously very computer based. So is everything, but there seems to be a special, unique relationship with computers for electronic producers, and we're often lone wolf kind of. I know you're not going to buy it, but nerdy kind of guys, and that goes hand in hand with other things you can do on the computer, and wanting to generally use a computer to create the things that you dream of. And music for me is the primary one, but this idea that you can create games or you can create worlds using a computer is, I don't know, it's what I've dreamed of since I was a kid, really. So I think coming to the NFT space and appreciating digital art and appreciating the fact that the world is heading in a digital direction. I think maybe electronic producers could see that even more clearly. They have a bit of an advantage there because they've been so rooted in computers for so long.
Right. Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So from your conversations with other musicians, where do you think the movement is in the music industry right now? Do you think people are just kind of catching wind of it, or they're still kind of cautious and looking at it sideways?
Well, I think there's going to be a huge hype period. where people buy in, or I guess, yeah, they invest in it, like a gold rush. And that, I think, is sort of what we're experiencing now. I think, the people who collect are going to distinguish between who's serious about it and who really cares about the art, and who's just kind of hopping on the bandwagon. I think it'll take time for me to prove how serious I am about the art, and it will take others time. And whether or not they spend that time, I think, will sort of determine, how involved in the community they are, or how much the community cares back at them. This is not based on any profound knowledge of the community. It's just my knowledge of any community, really,
Right.
and once, if a community sees sudden popularity, it's going to take a while probably to hash it out and figure out what's real, and what's going to sustain. So right now, my guess would be that this is, well, I could say with almost certainty that this is going to become an integral part of artistry. It's just how people go about it, and the care and attention that they show to it, I think, is going to have to evolve, right? And I think the value that people put into these things, and how, the creativity that they show when making them, I think, is going to evolve over time. But where people are at now is, I think it's gotten attention, and there's always that first round of people who dive in, and then others slowly come on board. So yeah, I think that's where it's at. But to me, it seems obvious that this is something that's going to sustain, but things take a while to catch on, So it's hard to say at what pace it's going to continue, but I think the destination is fairly clear for me.
Right. And I'll just say, from this conversation and kind of knowing your makeup and how you came to be, where you are in the music and just as an artist overall, the authenticity shows of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and why this would be cool for you to take a part in. So I think you're doing good on that end. But with regards to the NFT community, in general, have you had an opportunity yet to, kind of explore a little bit and on what's out there, or hop into the metaverse, or you're still working on that?
Yes, I got introduced to crypto voxel, and that was mind blowing to me. I was never like a big Minecraft guy or anything,
Right.
so to see, like, a world that you can go and exist alongside other people who, are part of an event, that was super cool to me, and it just got my brain sort of working on what's the most you could do with this, like where could you take that, and how could you make it individualized to your own art more and more. So that was really cool. I got to speak to Illustrator. Blau introduced us, and
Oh,
I got
wow.
to pick his brain a lot about where he feels like things are at and what appealed to him about the NFT space. And he's super insightful, and he's not super reactionary. He has like a very level head about it, but he really sees the value in it. So it was cool to see someone who I instantly, had a lot of respect for, by the way he talked, the sort of measured way that he talked about these things. I could tell he was really thoughtful about it, and I tried to soak up as much as I could from him. So those have been my early experiences with it. I got to talk, and of course the Origin people. I mean, the Origin who's hosting my drop, they're really hands-on, and they're really understanding of the fact that I come from a purely music background, and helping me to better understand the NFT space, and what the community is like. And honestly, from what I found, the community is just really collaborative and supportive and accepting, and that's an awesome sign to me. That was one of the things that really drew me to electronic music. I felt that if you could show that you're being authentic to the electronic music scene, they would receive you well. And that's my first impression of the NFT community. So yeah, I'm hoping that I'm right, and yeah, I'm hoping that people see the value in the stuff that we've made.
That's awesome, and you've definitely set a good precedent. There's a lot of people that are just trying to learn about it, and you're already in discussions with crypto voxels and some certainly high esteemed artists. So that's very cool. Maybe we'll see you throwing a show in crypto voxels before you know it. That would be definitely cool to see.
Yeah, actually, right after I tried out crypto voxels, I started making some 8-bit versions of my songs because I thought that would just be like a really cool way to match the tone and the environment and just make it like this unique space for the music to, I don't know, have a second sort of 8-bit life, which is something that coming from our age group, because I'm assuming you're in the same one as me, that like sprite based video game, it just really holds a place in my heart, and to this day it's still the kind of games that I like to make. So.
Well, 100%. In fact, I just had a purely 8-bit pixel avatar on our Discord community, and we had a poll up whether I should switch to the 16-bit. So that's how deep I am. But when you said you made 8-bit chiptune versions of your music, immediately my antennas and my radar went up and said that would be an amazing NFT that I would be lining up for. So like you're saying, there's so much collaboration and there's so much appreciation for authenticity. I think you'll find that the NFT community, the metaverse origin, we're a community of builders. We love to build and create, and we get excited about it. And it sounds like you are right at home here with us. So excited that you're getting in with your first drop, and it sounds like there'll be a lot more to come down the road, if I'm guessing correctly.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. My hope is to just keep making these because they're fucking awesome. I mean, it's just as an artist, it's just fun to like build the world that you saw when you were making the music,
Yeah, definitely. And as an aside, I don't know if you have an Oculus.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Okay, so initially I'd gone in crypto voxels for a bunch of things just on my desktop, but the day I threw on the Oculus and went in there, that was a different level. Like you have to do that if you haven't already.
All right, yeah, I'll do that. That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's like first person. I think someone even mentioned while we were checking it out that you should try it with VR. Like it works surprisingly well.
Yeah. I mean, people told me that, and I was like, yeah, when I get around to it. But once I did, it was a game changer. And I showed some other people. Now they won't stop asking me to jump back in. So definitely check that out. So people that want to stay involved with you, we have this drop coming up, obviously. Where would you recommend people to, follow you to keep up to date with the latest and greatest?
Yeah, my Twitter account is just Twitter/KSHMR Music. NFT.welcometokashmir.com. Kashmir, for you guys just listening, it's KSHMR. So it's the no vowel thing, KSHMR. And yeah, Twitter is probably the best place. You can catch up with me there, and NFT.welcometokashmir.com.
Great. So the drop's on the 28th. I know people are going to be excited to take part. I'm excited to try to get a copy of those stems, and wish you the best of luck. I think it's going to be a great drop.
Thank you so much, man. And thank you for a great interview. And you asked questions that were just the right questions. So thank you.
When you have a great guest, it's easy. Can't wait to see what happens on the 28th.
Oh, thank you, man. Peace.